Hey everyone, thanks for checking out this episode of Aurelius Podcast, episode 10. We have our guest this time around, Jeff Patton, who is a product management consultant and talks a lot about product discovery. And so our chat focused a lot on what product discovery is and how to do it. And my main takeaway here is that, product discovery is really a lot of what I might consider user research. And so we definitely talked about that as well, and even things like the wrong way to do user research and how to avoid it. As far as product discovery is concerned, Jeff talked about his process and how we can use product discovery to make sure we're building the right products and features, that they solve real problems, when product discovery starts and ends, and even the importance and dangers of a confidence level in a design or product idea you might have. If this is the kind of work that you're doing, I wanted to let you know that we've got something special for you in the new version of our platform, Aurelius. It's going to be the smartest user research and insights platform for design and product teams. We'll be launching that into beta very soon, so if you head to our homepage and sign up, you'll get product updates and be on the list for early beta access. Also, I just wanted to quickly mention, if you enjoy the podcast and think others would as well, it would really mean a lot to me if you could go to iTunes, SoundCloud, or wherever it is that you listen to our show and give us a rating. It helps us out a lot, and it helps your fellow professionals find us. Okay, let's get to the show. Welcome to Aurelius Podcast, episode 10. I am Zach Naylor, CEO and co-founder here at Aurelius. On today's episode, we have the very special privilege of having, in person no less, Jeff Patton, product consultant, speaker, and his business card says Chief Troublemaker. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Hey, Zach. Good to be here.
And so this was kind of luck that we had this. We had planned on having Jeff on the show, and through serendipity, you were in town just around the time that we were ready to actually reach out and start recording. And so we had the pleasure of having you in person.
It's perfect. Yeah, I took an Uber down here. I learned that there's free alcohol here, and that's what's caused me to want to attend.
That is true. That was been, I suppose, an unspoken secret of the show for a while now. And everybody knows.
Do you want to edit that out?
Oh, no, we're going to keep that in. We've kept in much worse. I can assure you of that.
Come up with something worse to say.
Absolutely. And actually, on that note, Jeff was in town, and he was talking a lot about, as he does recently, product discovery. And so I kind of want to jump in there, Jeff, and just say product discovery. What is that? How do you define that? What is product discovery?
I don't tell short stories. If you're in the product world, you do crap to make sure that you're building the right thing. Discovery is an old word, and I kind of resisted using any particular word, but there sort of needs to be a word. I follow behind, and somebody that's a friend and somebody I've known for a long time is a guy named Marty Kagan. And Marty uses the word discovery, but it's a word that I've heard used even before meeting Marty. But when I heard people using discovery, sometimes they would mean the stuff we do to gather requirements, or the stuff that we do to do design work, and things like that. But and actually, when I first heard Marty talking about discovery, and I heard other people talking about discovery, I kind of heard it as all that stuff. It's taken me a long time, and actually Marty's kind of beat it through my head, that discovery is the stuff we do to really validate that we're building the right thing. People in the design world and in the product world have a fabulous capability of convincing themselves that they are right, using lots of heavy research and finding the people to talk to that will convince them they're right, and or sometimes avoiding all that stuff. They can feel right enough without talking to anybody. Sure. Anyway, discovery gets called a lot of things. How I define discovery is the work that we do to build up a strong hypothesis for what we're building and evaluate how risky it is, and do deliberate work to validate we're building the right thing before we build it.
Great.
That's a long answer, huh?
Well, you know what? We'll take it. So here's the thing. We always beat this war drum, especially at Aurelius, building the right thing all the time. Yeah. But something you said in there, product discovery is part of making sure that we're validating that we're building the right thing.
Yeah.
You actually made mention of hey, we tend to want to do things to convince ourselves that we're right. And you actually mentioned using research to do that. So I'm curious, do you use research as part of discovery? Or, when you mention that, is research trying to convince ourselves? What do you mean by that?
There's kind of two sides to research was a word that scared me in early days. I started with being deliberate about UX practice in the early 2000s, and people used to say research and talk about specific research methods, and they talked about it in a way that made it sound a little scary. And I got a little scared by that, so I went back to just talking to a lot of users like I always used to. It took me a long time before I learned that that kind of counts as research too. You can be a little bit more rigorous about who you talk to and how you talk to them and how you record what you're talking to.
Sure.
And I see a lot of people using the word research to mean, look, if we've got an idea, we'll validate that there are people out there that will buy the idea. We may do research that will look at size of markets and look at types of consumers, and we'll use that research to predict that there are people that want our stuff. Mm-hmm. Over time, what I mean by research is, well, there's that, and there's actually putting your stuff in front of people, and even going one step further, actually not just putting stuff in front of people and asking them if they like it, letting people use this stuff and actually get value out of it, and actually see that it's useful. Asking people to predict if they would like something kind of counts as research, but it's not. Research covers a lot of things. There's lots and lots of kinds of research. But more and more I'm finding that there's lots of research that you can use to fool yourself. And the closer you can get to actually letting people use something in real life and confirm it works for them, that's the kind of research I'm going for.
Yeah.
Is that research? Zach, is that, what do you mean? Look, dude, you're the researcher.
I am a researcher. I'm not here to draw the line in the sand for the industry. You're
one of the guys that scare me about, know what it really means.
So I think people would convince you that I know what it really means. No, I actually completely agree with that. As a matter of fact, I'm glad that I asked about that, and I'm refreshed to hear the answer that you gave. Here's the reason why. And I'm going to tell a short story myself. So I have a friend of mine who works at a very large, well-known consultancy. I'll leave the name out of respect.
What letter does it start with?
I definitely won't do that.
I'm joking.
So, at the end of the day, what these folks do is they make a statement, right? They make a very confident statement that here's the thing that should happen with the strategy or the product, right? And then what they do is they gather as much evidence as they can to support their point of view.
That's the research I'm talking about.
And that's what scares you.
Yes, that's what scares me.
I'll tell you, Jeff, that's what scares me. That's what scares me into people making lousy decisions, people making decisions that don't have any rationale, or worse, rationale that's misleading.
Yeah. You can gather facts to support almost any opinion. And, anyway, but yes, the rationale that's misleading is that it's the hand-picked facts.
So here's the interesting thing that I want to ask as a follow-up to that. There's not
alternative facts. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, we're actually really against those here at Aurelius. Alternative facts are the word starts with B and rhymes with bullshit. Anyway. So here's the thing, right? What we're really talking about is secondary research in some way, right? Yeah. Reviewing white papers or taking a look at market and stuff like that.
Okay, good. So yes.
And that's okay, right? Like that has its place.
It's useful, but I think it's not useful as evidence. It's useful as inspiration.
Sure.
If you're a product thinker or a product designer, those kinds of things may help you, but I don't think doesn't count as validation.
So let's dig into that then. Validation, because we talked about this, validating that we're doing the right thing.
Actually, that's a loaded term also. It's even validation isn't validation. I don't know.
Fair enough.
Yeah, anyway.
Well, actually, let's get to more of the core of the point that we violently agree on. We should validate, or we should ensure, have confidence that we're doing the right things.
Confidence is the word that I like.
Okay.
Because it's a risk no matter how you do it. We talk. I gave a talk last night. If I walk into any startup accelerator, there are a lot of people that are confident that their product is going to be successful, and they're not right. So, but there's being confident is better than. I forget the word that you used.
Validated.
Validated sounds kind of black and white.
Mm-hmm.
I like a little bit of an element of, no matter how you put it, reality doesn't, meet your evidence sometimes.
Yeah. Well, so there's an interesting point, and a friend of yours actually made this comment. So we had Audrey Crane on an earlier episode, and one of the things that she said, which I absolutely loved, she kind of called me out on it and said, I don't think there is a right problem to solve. There are right problems to solve, and you choose which one you desire to chase after. And I would actually put it another way, based on our conversation, that perhaps that's confidence.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. There's a lot of craft in what we do, as sciencey as we try and make it. We choose our facts. We choose the problems to pay attention to. We choose solutions to those problems, and there's always better problems. There's always better solutions. We'd have nothing to do if we could just solve. If this was black and white, if there weren't better ways to do things, if we couldn't keep inventing better ways to do things.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we're talking. Where we started with all this is product discovery.
Yeah, yes,
product discovery should help us choose the right problems to solve. We need that confidence. How does product discovery, in a more tactical sense, give us that? What does that look like? What does that feel like?
Oh boy, that's a big question. Well, the way you said it is, look at I'm here in Minneapolis because I'm working with a group, and we do these long format 5-day immersive discovery sorts of things, where we go through lots of rounds of discovery. They talk to lots of customers and users all week long, and I'll talk about it as us building up a two-sided hypothesis. There's a problem side and a solution side. So yes, part of it is choosing the right problem to solve, and then and validating that it is indeed a problem. And I'll find people in the course of a week that we'll start out with a solution in mind. We'll ask them to back up and say, okay, great. If that's the solution, you've heard the solution looking for a problem thing. Let's confirm that there is in fact a problem you're solving. And we find people that find that there is no problem they're solving. And anyway, there's a problem side that we're using discovery to validate, and a solution side. I lost track. What was that? You were asking, how does that work?
Well, so we're saying product discovery should give us that confidence that we're going to make the right thing.
That's right. And that's what you're using rounds of discovery for. If discovery is there's a bazillion activities. Any activities are valid in terms of discovery, and they're all confidence building activities. Everything from interviewing people to putting prototypes in front of people to releasing things as small releases to small audience. Everything you can do, I was going to say everything short of building and shipping production quality software to everybody counts as discovery, but even that counts as discovery.
Interesting.
If your intention is to learn, it's discovery. But once you cross a certain threshold, you're confident that you're doing the right thing, and then you keep discovering whether you want to or not, but I'll make a point to people that you release software to earn or learn or both. And if your intention is to earn something or get profit or get benefit from something, that's where you want the confidence.
I see. Yeah. Would it be fair to say that product discovery is a process that takes many forms, but never truly ends in product management or product development?
Yeah, no, it doesn't. Products don't end. That's the reason discovery doesn't end. The difference between a product and a project is that the projects have a start and stop date. You can celebrate when a project ends. You can kind of call it successful, but the product is what you're left with when the project ends. And products when a project ends, you can celebrate. When a product ends, you don't celebrate. That's usually a bad sign if your product is ended.
Right.
That's not good. You want that product to live forever. When a product ends, you have a wake. That's a different thing.
Sure.
But products, especially digital products, we want to live forever because they're digital. We can keep upgrading them and changing them and improving them. They're malleable. They behave a lot more like services. And especially the life of a digital product, a technology product, it can be, we can keep changing it, improving it, and pushing it up there. We can give it we can make it almost immortal. And that's a product manager's job. And that's what the discovery thing is for. It's
awesome.
Continuous.
Awesome. I completely agree. So I want to share a story because we're kind of drawing this analogy of a product and a life, right? Like, and a friend of mine, I have no idea if he listens to the show, but a guy by the name of Nine. He's a former adaptive path designer and at other places, very sharp guy. And he used to live here. In one of the conversations we had, he said, the analogy I often use with people is that building a product is like having a baby. And so for 9 months, you go to the visits, you read up about how to raise a human, you take the vitamins, you eat better, you probably exercise, all of these things to make sure that you're in optimal shape for the day. And then you have a baby. That's when the work actually starts, right? So to your point, the project is those 9 months to its launch, hooray, but you have a baby to keep alive at this point.
Yeah, that's right. It's not over. You can't celebrate the ending of that project and have a party and and leave. One of the things that I do, I'm a consultant. I used to be a product manager at a company, and for whatever reasons, I became a consultant. I focus on product companies, but more and more over this last year, especially, I get calls from IT organizations asking me, for help doing things. And I tell them, I work with product companies, and you're more of an IT centric organization, and the way I teach stuff, it just is not going to jive with your culture, the way that you guys do things. And they say, no, we're calling you because we want to engage in a product centric culture. And this is a long preamble to, there's a lot that needs to change in a culture to do that. I remember working with a bank, in a big bank in Australia, and the way that they work is they do projects, they release something, and then they give it a short warranty period, like 30 days, and they release it to the BAU group, short for business as usual. And we started referring to that as the product orphanage. We spend 9 months on a project, we release it, we make sure it's give it a little bit of care, and then we dump it off in a place with lots of other products, where there's one person to every 10 to 20 products. And we let it, no wonder so many products end up in jail.
Sure.
Or should be. Anyway.
And that's obviously not a place we want to be. And so if we're talking about product discovery too, we would say that the cultural problem there too was that they lost the appetite or desire for learning. Right? They saw it as the product was launched and let's celebrate and walk away. I want to take a step back and go into another place that we were saying. So we were talking about doing the right things.
Yeah.
If I were to ask you, what is an example of a decision you would make or a recommendation that is not doing the right thing? What does that look like?
What is not doing the right thing?
Sure. So, right, we're doing product discovery to try to mitigate these risks, as you've actually referred to them.
Yeah.
But so let's imagine, we want to know what that looks like. Let's use the alternative and say,
what does it not?
What do we know
like?
It not look like?
Yeah. Okay, that's a pretty good question. I have to think about it. Well, it looks like what most people do. let's do a rigorous form of not doing discovery. The rigorous not doing discovery, starts with someone, usually a highly paid person who comes up with a fabulous idea, and turns it over to someone else, usually a designer, and the designer not doing discovery goes to their cubicle and moves very quickly through to doing user interface design and visual design, and crafts beautiful Photoshop documents that are fabulous. They'll usually spend a few weeks arguing back and forth with lots of other people in the organization about color and style and things like that. The organization will seek input from stakeholders and others in the organization who will critique it and add functionality that was missed. And the organization will twist it around and get feedback from everybody. Will finally come up with something that the organization loves, sort of, because it has a lot of trade-offs in it. The designer will put his foot down and insist on some specific things that are fabulous to make it super sexy, and they will release it, and the market will throw a WTF exception and say, what the hell is this? And we'll try and pretend none of it happened. Is that an example of not discovery?
I can't imagine anybody listening to this show has ever had that happen to them, Jeff. Okay,
I think that's happened all the time.
Sure.
For better or worse, I'm going to say controversial things. It starts to be an agency-style process a lot. Look, if you work for an agency and a client brings you a project, you learn pretty quickly that it isn't the customers or users that you're making happy. Well, first off, when we say customer, we mean the guy that hired us, the agency, and it is our job to make that person happy.
The guy who pays the invoice.
Yeah, the guy who pays the invoice.
That's right.
And we start to get good at the pitch. We start to get good at selling our design. And we start to get, if we need to sell our design with research, we start to get good at handpicking research that we're selling the design. And anyway, yada, yada, yada.
There seems like a lot of psychological biases that are, if biases is the correct plural form of that, I have no idea.
I think it's a great plural.
I'm not a linguist. I'm putting the stake in the ground. It's biases.
Yeah.
Anyway, that are
biasum or bison. No,
that's true. There are likely bison in agencies as well.
Yeah.
So that's a great point. And even going back to your story of, okay, so what does bad product discovery look like? I hear a good handful of points of failure.
Yeah.
So point number one that I heard you say is someone inside your organization had an idea.
Well, and of course, all ideas spring from insight, from somewhere, which could have come from outside. Actually, another point of failure is someone inside your organization brings in an idea that our biggest customer has asked for idea. That's another great source of bad ideas.
Yes.
Anyway.
Yes. Well, so anyway, I think the salient point to that is the idea sprung up without any supporting insight from outside of your building about what customers need and supporting any kind of behavior they have.
Insight's a good word. What's interesting is people often mistake people asking for things for insight. Certainly people will ask for things, and the executive who comes up with a great idea recognizes a problem, comes up with a great idea, and imagines a perfect universe. The customer or user who comes up with a great idea thinks of something and imagines a perfect universe, and we get to work building the thing they thought of. But the insight's a good word. Usually for me, insight isn't about a thing. It's about a problem to solve. Now we're coming back full circle to the finding the right problems thing. Yes. There's a lot of right problems. I'll agree with Audrey on that. But the insights have to be a little stronger, a little more powerful, and they're more about problems to solve than things.
Great. Next question I'm going to have to ask you then. how do we get to those insights? And we can't say product discovery because we already know that's true.
Product discovery is such a vague term. I've been talking about product discovery without saying anything specific, tactic-wise, about what goes in it. For someone listening to this podcast, they're going to say, what the hell is he talking about?
So before we lose that person who's going to close our podcast episode, I'll just ask you flat out, if somebody were to ask you to write a clickbaity blog post article headline that says the 4 steps or the 4 elements of product strategy.
It always has to have a number in it.
Yeah,
of course. There has to be 4.
And an exclamation point.
3 to 9 is usually okay.
Yeah.
But no even numbers.
Right. No, yep, that's true.
Yeah.
What would those be?
We're changing the what are the 4 steps to, or
it doesn't have to
what
be
are the
4
end steps to do product discovery? Yes. Ironically, I have 4 steps that actually they're not 4 steps. I have, the big step is first be clear about what your hypothesis is. Be clear about, what problem you're solving and for who, what your solution is, and what you believe is true, or what you believe they will do with that product when they get it. Think it through. What will happen after things come out. If you can tell a clean story about that, then we can move on, and I'll call that whole thing framing. I'll use keep that short and simple and crisp. Just pull what's out of your head and frame it. If it fails in framing, then push it aside. Do something else. Then, my next step is to build a deeper problem hypothesis. Tools for that are things like simple proto-personas or journey maps, or then this next step for me is building a simple solution hypothesis. That's anything from a sketch to a prototype to other models that explain it. And for me, a last step is to look back at that framing, look back at that problem, look back at that solution, and say, okay, great. I've got a fabulous I've got a good idea of the problem, good idea of the solution. What is the very least that I think could be a product? The smallest nugget of the problem to solve, the smallest nugget of the solution to deliver, and then look back at that. And then my next step from there is to, ask yourself this is the confidence question we talked about earlier. What would you bet that you're right? Would you bet me lunch you're right? That your hypothesis is going to work out? Would you bet me lunch you're right? Would you bet me a day's pay you're right? Would you bet me your next vacation you're right? Would you bet me your car you're right? Would you bet me your house that you're right? Look, if your bets, actually, that's maybe a wrong question. The problem is most entrepreneurs would bet their house. In fact, do bet their houses they're right. So I've got to rethink how I describe that. That's not working out. Then, look, if you're not confident you're right, build up a list of what scares you, assumptions that scare you, risks that scare you, questions you haven't answered, and then get to work going through some simple validated learning cycle. Pick off a list. What's your biggest fear? What's the least you could do to test it? And then test it, and then use what you learn from that test to rebuild your hypothesis. Yeah. So that's so how many steps is that? It's frame it, understand the problem, understand the solution, minimize it to what you think a good product is, assess your risks, and then build, measure, learn your way through that. I lost count. That may be 8 or 9. But it's under 10. That's it.
11, 12, 13. Yeah, doesn't matter.
Something like that.
I think it was a great answer.
And then when you're confident, move forward. So that's the thumbnail of discovery.
Yes.
That's how I summarize it for me.
Awesome. So this is actually a good place to point out that we are working on Aurelius version 2, which is going to be the smartest user research and insights platform for design and product teams. You can actually go to our website, www.aureliuslab.com, and sign up for updates on our progress and get on the waitlist for beta access to check it out whenever we release that. But let's get back to the episode. So, to bring it back to you, is it fair to say have an understanding of what you're trying to do, have an understanding of your customers and what you're trying to solve for them, make good decisions that are in support of both.
Yeah.
And then have a metric or have some indicators of whether or not those were good decisions. Measurement.
Let's bookmark measurement. I should let you finish that, but
I actually want to go one more place.
Okay, we'll go. Yeah, good. Because the measurement is
Tell me
a
if I'm
tricky
crazy
thing
on
during
what
discovery.
Tell me if I'm crazy on what I just said. Does that fairly summarize what?
That does.
Okay.
So one of the things I'll ask people to do is to say how they'd measure success.
Yes.
Part of building a hypothesis, a strong hypothesis, is being clear on, look, if we build this, this is what we expect to change in the world, and this is how we will measure it.
Yep.
But those measurements are, outcomes. They're what happens when you ship.
I actually believe
they aren't
there's
the measurements
two parts.
you use during discovery.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes,
Okay.
I actually believe there's two parts
yeah.
to an effective measurement.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I want
Did you say measurement or metric? I've gone rounds with people on this.
Is actually...
Is it a measure? Or people have told me measure is a verb and metric is the thing.
The interesting thing is I actually refer to it as both because I think it is a two-pronged approach.
Yeah.
But the one thing that you dove into that, I actually haven't heard before that I think is a brilliant...
How can I say? I said something you haven't heard before?
Yeah. You said, right? Okay, now if we're going to co-sign with that summary, have an understanding of what you're trying to do, goals.
Yeah.
Have an understanding of your customers and what they are trying to achieve.
Yeah.
Research insights.
Yeah.
Insights of your customers. Make a decision that support those things. We can do all of that. And we can be, as you mentioned, relatively scientific about that. We've got the rest.
Science-y is
sure.
the best you can
Science-y is a better way.
Yes.
But when we get to that point of decision, the thing that I took from what you just shared was the confidence then in that decision.
Yeah.
And that, I believe, actually separates the science-y to the scientific in a way. Because, like you said, are you confident enough to bet me lunch?
Yeah.
Are you confident enough to bet me a week's pay? Are you confident enough to bet me your house? And, to your point, it could be dependent on the person. They may just be generally
I'm
rogue.
backing away from that metaphor or that usage of that because, again, foolish people can be confident with very little evidence. We all have anecdotal evidence of that. So anyway, confidence may be the wrong.
Quite true.
You have to be, I don't know.
But I guess
let's think of something different. But anyway.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, the
I'm with you.
underpinnings of that, I think, are so resounding just to say, are you willing to bet what degree of something that is important to you?
Yes.
Even the most foolish people have things that are important to them, right?
Yes, that's
so I guess
right.
the point is to say, is it level 1 or 2 or 3 or 4? Because if it's level 1, that decision sucks.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't do that,
Yeah.
despite your evidence.
This is where, if your confidence isn't high, this is where the discovery thing comes in. Look, if you're a product manager at a product company, you know that you get asked to build a lot of shit that your confidence isn't high. It won't work. This is one of the arts. We were using the baby metaphor before. Product managers are asked to adopt other people's babies always. We get tossed babies from everywhere, and we have to learn to fall in love with them.
It's a lot like a daycare, actually.
It is, and so. Look, if we get tossed someone's baby and we're not confident that baby is going to grow up to be a scientist, or our confidence is kind of low, it doesn't mean we say, let's give up on that thing.
Yeah.
It means, okay, well, why isn't our confidence low? So when I talk about building lists of questions, assumptions, risks, I say, well, what's the thing that makes me unconfident in that particular baby? And then that's where the discovery work comes in. That's where we actually start looking to say, okay, am I right or wrong about that? Is my assumption wrong? Is the risk or the thing that worries me not really a risk? Is the question or hole in the information I have not really there? That's where the work comes in. That's the discovery work.
I see.
Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So low confidence doesn't mean don't do it.
It means lack of information.
It means that yes.
And a lack of information or a lack of insight leads to a lack of confidence.
That's right.
And that rots product development.
Yeah. And say that again?
It rots product development.
It rots
from the very core.
Well, what's interesting is what rots product development sometimes is overconfidence with little information. That's the scary part.
That is very true.
It's the people that are wildly confident with nearly no insight or no information or no past experience. Those are the things that I can say this with extreme confidence because I'm guilty of 20 years of it, because I've done stupid shit for the first 10 years of my product career. Yeah. I've been wildly confident things were going to be successful many times. It's taken me a lot of stumbling before I realized that's stupid to be so confident without any kind of evidence.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing too, because we were talking about agencies and kind of consultancies at the start of this in some way, and we took a jab at their process. You know what? And I'll even fall in the sword. I'll say
what's interesting is their job to sell confidence. I mean,
bingo. But here's the thing. Here's what I've told people: when you present a problem, regardless of how well that problem is defined, when you present somebody a problem, anybody who immediately answers to you that they have the solution to your problem, you should run as far and fast away from as possible.
Or hang with them and see what happens.
That can be an expensive comedy show.
So long as you're not the one that has to suffer with them. But
sure.
Anyway, if you work for the same company they do, that could be a problem.
Yeah, no, exactly, anyway, right? And so,
yes. Sometimes it's nice to, maybe it's the alcohol talking, but sometimes you can see a train wreck coming, and you stay on the train to see what happens.
What is that? What are the signs of a train wreck coming? I mean, I want to hear that. Like, you've been around, you've seen this, right?
It's something that comes with getting old. Zach, you're not that old. How old are you? Is this too personal for a podcast?
Well, please. How old do you think I am? I like to ask this when somebody asks me how old I am. I won't be offended. There's very little that will offend me.
Yeah, you're probably 57. No, I'm joking.
That's usually the answer I get. And in my heart, I'm actually 57.
I was trying to offend you, but no, I would have guessed probably early 30s.
That's correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what we ought to do when we post this episode? Anybody who listens to it and guesses my appropriate age, we will give a discount to Aurelius too. That's what we'll do.
I've been to a lot of carnivals, and if I guess your age, I usually get a stuffed animal.
I'm sorry to say we're not actually in the business of building stuffed animals. That, as it turns out, Jeff, does not solve our customers' problems. So we've done relatively effective product discovery in that regard.
What if I guess your weight, Zach?
That one is actually even harder.
Okay. Anyway, all right, but we digressed a couple stages of tangent.
Yeah.
Here. What were we talking about?
So you said sometimes you stay on the train, even though you know train wreck's coming. And my question simply was, what are the signs that a train wreck is coming? Because a lot of us don't want to stay on that train.
I was going to say, the truth is, if it's my own company, I don't stay on the train. As a consultant, I allow small train wrecks to occur often because that's the only way to let people understand that anyway, you can't warn somebody about the warning signs when they're confident. There's that confidence warning again. If they're confident and you tell them about reasons they shouldn't be, they won't trust you. So you have to let that occur. So long as it's not gonna kill them or hurt them, that's not a bad thing. But what are the signs? Oh, I don't know. We're probably going back to the other stuff they're doing. The signs are always, in fact, maybe the biggest sign is overconfidence. Oddly. Yeah, I'm actually losing faith in that word confidence. I'm unconfident in my use of the word confidence,
which is perhaps a sign that you know exactly what the hell you're doing. You're.
I'm not confident in that statement, Zach.
This is like the movie Inception at this point.
This is a dream within a dream kind of experience here, but no, overconfidence is certainly one. Overconfidence is one of the most blinding things you can run into. You've got to be able to black hat your own stuff. You've got to be able to look at things. And there is a nasty amount of split personality disorder necessary to survive in a product world. This came up in another kind of a presentation. Who is it? The six thinking hats person.
I know who you're referring to. I can't remember the name.
It's on the tip of my tongue.
The different colored hats?
Yeah,
exactly.
I know
you're talking about.
So, okay, I'm going to remember it in just a minute. So we have to really shift a lot between yellow hat thinking and black hat thinking.
And just for those unfamiliar, yellow hat thinking as opposed to black hat thinking is
yellow hat thinking is optimistic. How awesome would this be? How great is this? And black hat thinking is pessimistic thinking. What could go horribly wrong with this? And we kind of have to swing back and forth between this. To champion an idea, you have to have yellow hat thinking. And this is where the child metaphor comes in pretty good here too. Look, you have to have absolute faith in your child that they can go on to succeed. And similarly with your product. But if that's all you have, that starts to be a problem. We started on this, what are the signs of the train wreck? And it's leadership that only displays yellow hat thinking, that isn't able to black hat, or isn't actually some of the best leaders might not be good at black hatting, but will include black hats on their teams because they know they need the balance. So it has to be in there. If there is other signs of a train wreck is evidence, is the things that we've been talking about before, is nothing. And evidence doesn't have to be, it can be anecdotal. It can be a little bit, if you can just clearly say, I believe this is going to succeed for these reasons. Okay. That's something. Better evidence would be actually seeing somebody use your product and want it and like it and tell other people. But we started on this thing with signs of a train wreck. Trying to think. There are bazillion little processy things. I would expect people to do some work to validate. I would expect people to be able to tell strong stories about the problems they're solving and who they're for and things like that. I don't want to pick on people, but
let's pick on them.
And I'm trying to figure out how to characterize this. Just working with a team today, and they're describing the characteristics their product needs to have, things it needs to do, and they're describing it from their perspective. They're describing qualities of their product, and I'll ask, well, who wants that, and why do they want that, and they can't tell a good story. You start to realize that they're not thinking about the person who's using this product. If I see easy to use and intuitive on a list one more effing time, I'm going to shoot myself. My usual answer for that is great. Your users want something that's easy to use and intuitive. That's in contrast to those users who want it to be hard to use and painful.
Yeah, exactly. We're not meeting their needs.
Non-obvious. Specs like easy to use and intuitive are surefire signs we're not thinking about who's using this product and why.
Starts with B, rhymes with bullshit.
That's
right?
Correct.
And actually, I want to take that opportunity.
I've named a couple, but it's a bad answer to that question.
No, I think it's a great answer to it. And maybe because I'm biased, but the way I typically describe it, I am biased. But when we say easy to use, here's the interesting thing, and how I usually work with people to do this, is if you started with those very clearly defined goals, what is it we're trying to do? You can say, make it easy to use. I'm actually completely fine with that statement.
Really?
Until I Yes, because I call them
I
the
want to
carpet.
hit people with a baseball bat when I hear that statement. I never have yet.
No, make no mistake.
I'm getting older. I might.
I keep the samurai sword on the table. I just don't unsheath it yet. So you say one of our goals is to do X, right? Like make the article sharing functionality as accessible as possible. What should that help you do? Make it easier to use. Great. How will you know it's easier to use? And so that's when we get... Right, we just dig into that layer deeper of saying, what does easier to use? How will that manifest? What behavior will you see? What sort of things?
Exactly. Fair enough. You got to get to a point where you can talk about what it would look like and how to observe it. So the bullshit story that I usually tell is to say easy to use like an ATM or easy to use like an F-16 cockpit. Because for an F-16 pilot, the F-16 cockpit controls were a lot easier to use than the F-15 cockpit controls. Sure. Easy to use is relative to the person who's using it and what they're trying to accomplish. Yes. Easy to use for your grandma is not easy to use for someone else that's not your grandma.
For Iceman and Maverick.
Yes.
No, so the thing is, we are actually completely agreeing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just I want to. So I agree with exactly what you're saying. And my shorthand is to say easy like what? I don't want to hear you say easy. I want to hear you give me a metaphor for easy in the context of your product. Easy like what? Give me an example of what easy is. Easy isn't useful. Fast isn't useful. Anything, any characteristic of a product that you can evaluate, that you can self-substitute for, isn't useful. Whenever you introduce a subjective term, you ask, like if I say that tastes good, you start to think about what tastes good to you. If that's hot, that's cold, that's easy, that's hard, that's painful. It's those are all self-referential terms, and if you use those kinds of self-referential adjectives to describe your product, well, it's a signal that you're not horribly aware of someone else.
And I would boil all that down into the old UX axiom: you are not your user.
Yeah.
I think that's oversimplified, but in reality, I mean, it describes that very well, right?
In the spirit of being contradictory to everything, sometimes you are.
And I actually don't disagree with that either, which is why I say that old good. UX axiom. Yeah. I think there are a lot of these hokey, but shitty things that we like to say.
Like all axioms, they only have to be true a lot of the time. Or sound
not
good,
even a lot of the time, right?
Or be alliterative.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
True. Yeah, I mean, so okay, and this is interesting too because it's weaving together a lot of things that we've talked about. So we talked about, hey, listen, have a very clear understanding. It'd be super
cool if any of the crap we talked about came together nicely.
I'm gonna take my best effort to do that. We talked a lot about, hey, good product discovery, and doing this stuff is having a very good understanding of what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
And a good definition of that goes beyond simple statements. Right? Then we talked about having a really good understanding of the people we're doing this for.
Yes.
Right? And then really effective product discovery. We can have confidence if we can make a decision that clearly illustrates evidence in both of those things, that it's helping us achieve something that we very clearly defined, and it's supported by something we understand from the people we're trying to do that for. And at the end of the day, that's a strong product strategy, yes?
Yeah, fair enough. That's a way of working. And more and more, I run into people that I met 10 years ago. First, I hate running into people I met 10 years ago because that means I'm 10 years older. And secondly, I run into people 10 years ago that I met when they were just starting out, and now they're very successful at what they're doing. And especially people that are very successful in a product world. And one of the questions I'll always ask them is, we'll have a long conversation about a lot of different things, and I'll want to hear how they're doing and what they're doing. But I'll always ask them, if you had to give one piece of advice to someone who is a product manager or going into the product world about how to be successful at this, what would it be?
Mm-hmm.
And almost always, and by almost always, I mean more than half the time, they will say, spend more time with the people who use your products.
Yep.
I'm not talking about data. I'm talking about empathy. I'm talking about understanding. I'm talking about walking in their shoes, by actually walking in their shoes, being there with them while they do things, and understanding the people. There's no shortcut around understanding the people that use your product. There is no tidy data or bar chart, pie chart, or heat map that will explain your customers to you. It's the one-on-one contact. So set aside any of the crap that I've said about discovery or anything we've talked about process. If there's one thing that you have to do, it's that. It's understand the people you're building for. And even saying that, I know people that have been wildly successful that don't. And
in that point, I will actually jump in and share a quote that I heard. I believe it was actually from Jared Spool. But you know what he said? People are often very successful in spite of themselves.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of different ways you can say that. But I want to get back to the more important point.
There's a more important point?
Yes. That everything that you just said, that there is no shortcut to the hard work. If you want to build a great product, if you want to have a great product strategy, you have to do the hard work of actually learning from the people you're trying to serve.
And let me put an asterisk by that, and then and say, unless you're lucky.
Unless you're lucky and you're successful in spite of yourself, in which case I'll put two asterisks and say that luck will run out. At which point,
it will. Absolutely,
you need to adopt.
Always runs out. I agree
that culture and hunger of learning.
Yeah,
Jeff Patton, this was an amazing conversation with you. We have covered a great number of topics about mostly focused on product discovery, talking about doing the right things, right, and the ways that we get there. And in summary, as most episodes are, for those of you who listen to our show regularly, have a very good understanding of what we're trying to do as a company, as a business, as a product. Learn from our customers, our users, people, and then make decisions based off of that. If you do that, I will go on record and say that you are at least halfway likely to be successful.
46.5%.
I'm going to go 57. Jeff Patton, thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything that you would like to share with people listening to the show about the work that you're doing?
Everybody should go out and buy my book. I have a 15-year-old daughter I need to put through college. That's important.
It is important.
Also, and a 13-year-old daughter, but she doesn't want to go to college. We'll change her mind on that. I teach classes. You should go to my website. I teach classes on product ownership, and as long as they will let me, I teach Scrum Alliance certified classes, and I don't teach any Scrum. I teach what we've been talking about. I focus on product ownership, and I teach product management. I'm known for story mapping. We didn't say that term even once here, and I'm pleasantly refreshed by that. But it's a halfway decent book, so you should buy that and review it if you've already got it. And check my website and look for a class. I'd love to meet you in person.
Awesome. Okay, so Jeff Patton, name of the book is Story Mapping.
User story mapping, O'Reilly.
User story mapping by O'Reilly. We'll have a link to that
subtitle
in the show notes. Go check out Jeff Patton if you guys are trying to do this type of work. Obviously, talk with him. He can help you coaching your teams. Jeff Patton, thank you so much for joining the show. It's been a great pleasure.
Pleasure to be here.
If you enjoyed this episode, consider leaving us a rating on iTunes or wherever it is that you listen to our podcast. And also, you can fill out our podcast survey, where you can let us know if someone awesome that we should have on the show, and even tell us about the things you would want to hear about, topics that are interesting for you. You can check that out in the show notes or on our website. Thanks for listening to Aurelius Podcast, talking about product strategy and design strategy. We are the first platform of its kind to help you solve the right problems for your customers and your business and build products and services that truly matter. You can check us out at aureliuslab.com. That is www.aureliuslab.com. You can check us out on Twitter at Aurelius Lab and Instagram Aurelius Lab. We'll see you next time.